So think of yourself at the age of 12. Do you remember the pimples? And whatever other words you would like to attack that problematic time. 12 takes place amid the maelstrom of adolescence when the hormones rage and kids who might have been placid kiddos sometimes become moody or fresh or ill-behaved in middle school. And I know because I worked in middle school for 7 years. And I have to tell you, I preferred elementary school and high school to middle school any day. By the 6th or 7th grade, some kids also begin to develop a more circumspect assessment of their elders. And the adults might lose the hero status, their hero status, when the kids realize that their elders have feet made out of clay. And so our gospel today revolves around a middle schooler, in reality, if Jesus went to school. A 12-year-old Jesus who is portrayed as being a whole lot smarter than his elders, including his parents who seem obtuse. Does that sound familiar? Jesus, as we know from 2,000 years worth of reflection, is special. So his scriptural acumen does not appear to be out of the ordinary, at least to those of us who know the whole story. Mary and Joseph seem to be out of the loop, although they were in that stable in Bethlehem when the angel sang and the shepherds came to visit. And they seemed surprised by the fact that their son would feel compelled to leave them and take his seat amidst the learned scholars. And Jesus is depicted as being surprised that they were the bride. So, what's the story all about? Did Jesus, like tons of 12-year-olds before and after him, begin to separate from his parents on his way to becoming his own parent, a person that we know from later gospel verses would not approve of? He does return with them to Nazareth. What other choice would you have at the age of 12? But he seemed to have returned a different person. What did he see in the big city of Jerusalem that might have changed him? Did he find a city filled with adults who had adapted to what he regarded as evil? Did he, as a passion-filled 12-year-old, want to set them right? You know how 12-year-olds can be. Because when he returned to Jerusalem 18 years later, probably saying the same things he said when he was 12, things were as they ever were. They hadn't changed. So around Christmas time, the adults who orchestrate the holiday wax eloquent about the powers and the abilities of children. So listen to these words of Isaiah. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the young goat. The calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. But do adults really ever listen enough to children to actually follow them? Would they even consider it? Or do adults actually require a miracle to listen to the voices of children? Children who sometimes see with the eyes of grace rather than of hypocrisy. I remember the first time we took our granddaughter Amelia to Center City, Philadelphia during Christmas time to see a play. So she was probably 6. And we were walking through the subway tunnels and she saw homeless people sleeping on piles of blankets. And she was beside herself. What could we do for them? Why are they here? Where are their families? Why aren't their families taking care of them? This is terrible. Why isn't somebody doing anything to help them? Nothing we could say to her could console her. So Amelia turns 14 next month, and there are still people sleeping in the subway tunnels. And there are tent cities in Philadelphia and in many other major American cities. And the adults in charge regularly break up the tent cities and disperse the people as if that will end homelessness. Because efforts at addressing the real culprits of homelessness, mental illness, and drug addiction just costs too much. Children like David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez, who survived the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas school shooting in Florida, have spent the last 6 years trying to shame adults into adopting common sense gun laws. Some adults in charge of the government actually made fun of them and their efforts. And too many other adults have simply ignored their concerns. And so we continue to have school shootings. The most recent one was not, even a month ago? In 2019, the 16-year-old Swedish schoolgirl, Greta Thunberg, stood before the UN Climate Action Summit and thundered, "How dare you?" to world leaders who had failed to address climate change. Her efforts to change the world were dismissed by her elders as being naive. And as I was writing these actual words in the homily, my alert on my phone went off to tell me that half of the population of an Alaskan bird species had died off, the largest die-off in modern history. And this is not the canary in the coal mine. Thunberg was on the cover of Time magazine, but most adults still dismiss her as being naive, even as wildfires and droughts and floods devour parts of the world every year. So kids like Amelia, Emma, David, and Greta, like Jesus, spoke truth to power. And they are not and have not been the only ones. But kids don't vote. They have no influence, so nobody pays any attention to them. And too many adults dismiss their hypocrisy detection system as sass rather than as substance. So one of my sons is on the local school board, and the superintendent was talking at a meeting a couple months ago about the lack of respect that some children sometimes demonstrate for adults in school. And I'm sure you could all make comments as well, and certainly a lot of that is true. And my son, who is Amelia's father, and who is my mini-me, he took issue with the superintendent. He said that if you look around at the adults in public life today, very few of them deserve anyone's respect. Adults, he said, should not command respect just because they are adults. They need to earn it by practicing what they preach and by being honest. And my late father, who never attended college, drilled that into me. One of his favorite comments about self-righteous adults behaving badly was, "Do as I say, not as I do." So I attended a funeral on Friday, and I didn't really know the deceased very well, but for about 10 years, we would meet up at fundraisers, and we would sit and talk probably for about an hour as if we had just seen one another the week before. And she and her husband died within 2 months of each other, which was surely a tragedy for her family. So as the presider droned on and on during a mind-numbing homily where he endlessly repeated the same thing, I started studying the pictures on the walls, and I had seen these pictures many times, and I had lots of time to study it, believe me. So Jesus, and one of the pictures serendipitously is the story of Jesus in the temple, the picture of Jesus in the temple. So in the picture, Jesus, who looked like he was 6 rather than 12, commanded the center of the painting, and he was sitting underneath the tablets of the 10 Commandments. His haloed parents were to his right, and for a church built in the 1840s, Joseph looked like a young man, which was interesting. I noted that. There were 2 men sitting at his feet and 2 to his left, one with his hand cupped to his ear, leaning in as if he didn't want to miss one word that Jesus had to say. So I'd be the first to say that I have not always heard what Jesus was saying to me, because too often his voice is lost amid a cacophony of voices out there, which the internet has only made worse. So amid the voices that cajole, berate, inflame, advise, warn, compliment, seduce, assure, distract, and reward us, we need to listen for the heartfelt voices, the ones that are filled with compassion and kindness, the voices that forgive and seek peaceful solutions to thorny problems. That is the voice of our God, who often does, as most of us know, speak the language of love in the voice of a child. And the good news is, because there's always good news, is that if we harden not our hearts, we, like the children, will not only hear, but also speak with the language of love, which is the voice of God.